Hey there, my name is Valhale, and in this video I'm going to talk about Estelle Bright from the Legend of Heroes Trails in the Sky. This analysis will be going over Estelle in the first Trails in the Sky, not SC or the third. Estelle is the main character of the game and one of the two characters who is permanently available in your party. The focus of the video will be on Estelle's stats and orbment compared to everyone else, as well as her crafts.
Wanna see what I got?
Estelle's orbment is her most defining trait. Her orbment has two lines, with the lines being a 4-line and a 3-line with no restrictions on any slot. Lines affect what spells the character can access, as well as how much EP they will have. Estelle's orbment costs 240 of the 4 base elements to open all slots, and when all slots are opened, Estelle ends with a 290 EP pool to use. Every other character has 1 or 2 slots restricted to a specific element, such as Joshua, who is forced to use 2 times quartz. Because Estelle does not have this restriction, her orbment gives her easy access to a wide variety of arts and makes it so she can access every art in the game except for Saint. Estelle can easily adjust her orbment to fight any enemy in the game if the quartz is available. Estelle is a jack-of-all-trades character, with her having balanced stats in all aspects. Looking at her level 34 stats compared to the other playable characters, she is 5th in HP, 4th in strength tied with Tita, 3rd in defense, 5th in art strength tied with Tita again. Everyone's arts defense and agility are the same, and everyone is tied in speed except for Joshua. With the defense and HP quartz equipped, Estelle usually has enough bulk to survive an extra hit or two, which can be helpful because most of the characters who are in the party for a long time tend to be quite frail. Moving on to Estelle's crafts, which were tested using a level 27 Estelle. This was not the most optimal build, but it was helpful for testing the crafts. The damage numbers will be higher than normal as Estelle is over-leveled for this area of the game. The enemy that was used for testing was the Hillside Bee found in Chapter 4 on Nightmare difficulty. All of Estelle's basic crafts have a delay of 30 AT, which is the same as a basic attack. AT is used to determine when a unit gets their next turn after an action, comparing the base AT of an action to the unit's speed. The first craft Estelle has access to is Morale, which she starts with. Morale costs 20 CP, and when activated it grants herself and all allies in a 3-tile radius around her a 20% strength buff. Morale is the only area of effect strength buff the player has access to in the game. Morale lasts until 500 AT is used up, which is generated at the end of every turn, and when the amount of AT generated passes 500, the buff ends. When testing the practical duration of Morale, each party member got around 3 turns of using the Morale buff. In all of the Trails in the Sky games, strength buffs affect both physical and magical damage. However, when testing the damage increase of Morale, the damage of Estelle's basic attacks only increased by 10%, and the spell Hellgate increased by 13% for both Estelle and Joshua, despite giving a buff of 20%. Depending on how much damage the party was doing to the enemy initially, or with elemental weakness, the increase in damage could be much higher. This is only showing the baseline. Estelle's second craft is Taunt, which she acquires at level 4. Taunt costs 20 CP to activate, and when activated, Estelle targets an enemy within 10 tiles, and if successful, that enemy and all enemies in a 3-tile radius are inflicted with rage, forcing the enemies to attack Estelle. Personally, I do not find Taunt too useful because mini-bosses are immune to it, and against normal enemies it is usually better to do damage. However, it does have some niche uses. Taunt can be used to bait low-move, melee-only enemies who will follow Estelle and do nothing but move towards her. It can also be used to have tile-targeted area of effect spells target Estelle, where she can move out of the way, causing the spell to miss, wasting the enemy's turn. Taunt can be used to stop enemies from casting healing arts. Taunt cannot be used to stop the enemy from calling reinforcements or splitting into more enemies. Estelle's third craft is Hurricane, which she acquires at level 8. When using Hurricane, Estelle moves to the location chosen and unleashes the attack in the area around her. Hurricane's radius looks like this, with Estelle in the center. When activated, all enemies in the radius around her are hit, knocking them back away from Estelle. Hurricane has a base power rating of -8, which means Hurricane is slightly weaker than a basic attack. When testing on the Hillside Bees, it did 5% less damage than a basic attack. This craft is very useful in the early game, as attacks can still do decent damage and the player does not have many other AoE options available. Estelle's fourth craft is Comet, which she gains at level 19. Comet is a unit-targeted attack that hits in a line starting from Estelle. Because it is unit-targeted, it is difficult to hit 2 or more enemies with it. The attack does not move Estelle and does not knock enemies back. Comet has a power rating of 20, which when testing gave about an 8% damage increase against the Hillside Bee. Not a big fan of Comet, but if a basic attack can finish off an enemy and Estelle wants to stay in position, Comet could be useful in this case. Or if Estelle needs to attack with no knockback. However, I would just stick to using spells in this case. Estelle's 5th and final basic craft is Hard Break, which she acquires at level 27. Hard Break is a single target melee attack that requires Estelle to move to her target to attack. Hard Break inflicts Impede, which cancels charges such as spells and some special attacks enemies have. Hard Break has a power of 30, which through testing I found increased Estelle's damage by about 15%. The main reason to use Hard Break is to impede enemies, but it could be used to finish off an enemy that would barely survive a basic attack. However, it is better to use an offensive art in this case. Before moving on to Estelle's S-Crafts, I will briefly explain how S-Crafts work. An S-Craft is a powerful craft that a character can use off-churn, interrupting the churn of whoever is active if they have not taken an action, otherwise the S-Craft user will go after. They require at least 100 CP to activate and will consume all the character's CP when activated. S-Crafts also gain a boost when activated at 200 CP, which is usually around a 25% boost to damage. Estelle's initial S-Craft is Pummel, which has 40 power as well as having a higher AT delay of 35 instead of the standard 40. 40 power may not seem much higher than Hard Break, however S-Crafts use a different formula to calculate damage than other attacks that scale with character level. In the test, Pummel did 75% more damage with less than 200 CP, and 123% more damage with 200 CP. When used at 200 CP, Pummel did 23% more damage. Pummel is best used to take important churn bonuses from the enemy, hit the enemy hard, and to finish off problematic enemies. Estelle's second S-Craft is Barrage, which has 240 power but has a higher delay than Pummel at 40 AT. Barrage is far more powerful than any other single target S-Craft, but it is not as useful as some of the other characters' later S-Crafts. Once Estelle has Barrage, there isn't any reason to use Pummel as Barrage does significantly more damage and the slightly higher AT delay is worth the increased damage. Estelle did 194% more damage with less than 200 CP and 288% more damage at 200 CP. When used at 200 CP, Barrage did 32% more damage. Barrage is almost a complete upgrade to Pummel and should be used the same way. For all Estelle's crafts, the damage increase or decrease is affected by the enemy's defense or defense. All the numbers shown are not always going to be 100% accurate, this is just the baseline to show the average increase against most enemies. Estelle's role constantly changes throughout the game based on who is in the party and how many people are in the party. She is usually going to be an attacker attacking with spells due to how weak physical attacks usually are in this game. Her best endgame role is as a support caster, healing and buffing the party with morale and earthwall. Estelle is also one of the characters to have access to a 130 strength weapon, bolstering how strong her barrages can be in the late game, which gives some powerful burst damage to the party. Overall, Estelle is quite strong throughout the game, but she will usually not be the strongest character in the party. She will be outclassed by more focused characters when they are available. However, because she is one of the 2 characters to be permanently available, she is arguably the second best character in the game, but not the second strongest, and I imagine many of the people just shook their heads at me thinking who is a better character than Estelle. If you disagree with me or have something you'd like to see analyzed in a future video, please leave a comment down below. The next video I have planned should be about Joshua and FC.